This is United We Strike Radio on the International Community Radio Network. Don't buy, don't comply, ask why. UnitedWeStrike.com Radio.
United We Strike Radio Marathon for November 12th, 2013. And yeah, we do this once a month on the second Saturday of the month. And I think we picked kind of an opportune time to have it this month because there just seems to be so darn many things going on this month. Yeah, people are definitely waking up and starting to smell the coffee. We've got truckers here in D.C. This weekend. Not as many as a lot of the promoters were leading us to believe that there might be, but a hell of a lot more than what you'll hear about on the mainstream media. We've also got something about a masked ball that's going to take place in Washington. It's open invitation. Bring your Guy Faux mask, and you're welcome to attend if you happen to be in the Washington, D.C. area. I understand that's coming up. So there's a lot going on. And to talk about some of that, I'm going to bring in our friend Lark in Texas, who always has an opinion on everything. Lark, are you there, man?
I am indeed. You sounded like what you were describing was something from Eyes Wide Shut. Bring your Guy Fawkes max. Huh?
Bring it along, man. Bring it along. Well, I'm not even sure when that one's coming down. It is a long holiday weekend this week. I understand we have a banking holiday on Monday. It won't be a holiday for most of us working stiffs. But the bankers, I think, are taking a holiday on Monday. And a lot of government workers here in D.C., I'm sure, will take that as a flex day. So, Monday there's probably not going to be that much traffic on the roads anyway that would be hindered by our visiting truck drivers. But, they are making their presence known. I think, some of the reports I heard initially was that we were supposed to have 10,000, maybe even 20,000 truckers descending on D.C. Best reports I'm getting right now is there are in the high hundreds, low thousands. There's somewhere between 800 and 1,500 truckers that have seen fit to burn up some very expensive diesel fuel and descend on Washington, D.C. So it's not a bad turnout, but I don't think it's quite as good as what the promoters had hoped for. The thing about it is, if you turn on CBS or NBC or CNN or whatever the news network of the day is, you're going to hear them talking about 10, 15 trucks showed up. No big deal.
Well, I had always rather thought that this was a psychological operation from the beginning, and at least in terms of its organizers and so forth. So I didn't put a whole lot of credence in it. But you also mentioned an energy conference here in Boulder coming up in Colorado.
Yeah, that is going on this weekend. That's the Breakthrough Energy Conference. These guys, this is the second annual conference. They held one last year in the Netherlands. It was a very successful conference. This year they decided to hold it in Boulder, Colorado. And even with all the trials and tribulations those boys had to face, I understand they got treated badly by the University of Colorado and had to at the last minute change their venue. So they had to put on their dancing shoes at the last minute there to bring that show off. But initial reports I'm getting from attendees of that conference is that it was very well received. The material being presented there is excellent. And anybody who might be interested in finding out more about that conference, and if you are in the Boulder, Colorado area, I believe they will have additional presentations going on tomorrow. The conference is sold out, but there are seats available on kind of a spotty basis. Go to globalbem.com and find out more about that. And hopefully I'll have some video from some of the attendees to put on my my Smart Scarecrow show that I do on smartscarecrow.com. I'll have that probably in about 2 weeks when I do a show on a Thursday evening, and we'll do some coverage of that event. But apparently quite an event.
Well, Gary, do you think that they'll do away with campfires eventually?
Well, there's I'm sure that a lot of the when in this genre, in this alternative media genre, of course, it attracts a varied group, and I can't say that I agree with everybody that gets involved in trying to we come at this from many different perspectives. Now, I was a Boy Scout leader for a very long time. I was a Boy Scout leader for about 4 years after my son was out of Scouts. They couldn't find any other dads to do it, so I had to do it. And you talk about campfires. Our standard mantra when we went off into the woods for a camp out was that we would leave the woods in better condition than how we found them. But yes, we had our campfires, and we had a darn good time, and we played hard and enjoyed ourselves. But when we were getting packed up and ready to leave, we would police our campground. We would make sure we returned that area to as pristine a condition as when we walked into the woods.
I was a Cub Scout. I remember very well.
I think the moral of the story is take what you need, but leave the rest, so there'll be some for future generations. I mean, we have dominion over this planet. I mean, if there's something you need and it's freely available from nature, enjoy. Just don't be greedy and take more than you need, because remember, there are generations coming up behind you who would also like to enjoy some of those things in nature.
Well, the Boy Scouts have really changed. Just this morning, I saw a couple old duffers like us that were dressed in Boy Scout uniforms. They had lots of patches and badges and so forth. As you know, or maybe you don't know, the Boy Scouts of America is located right here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Las Colinas. And of course, they've changed their policies of late, which of course has been a bit controversial here in Texas, as you might imagine. But I got a look-see at some of these Boy Scout leaders, and I have to tell you, they don't look like the Boy Scout leaders I remember as a boy.
Is that good, bad, or indifferent?
Well, yeah, see what you want in it, but it's there. Believe me, I think I said it very clearly. These folks just don't look like the Boy Scout leaders that you and I may have had when we were young.
Well, I kind of understand. The Boy Scouts, if I remember correctly, got sued because not only would they not allow homosexual leaders, but they also denied membership to openly homosexual boys. Now, I know for a fact, when I was a Boy Scout leader, we had a couple kids in the troop who, were a little light in their loafers. And most of the boys knew that, these kids were a little bit light in their loafers. But, nobody cared. Nobody messed with them.
Oh, I agree.
And these kids, these kids were not molesting the other kids or anything. They were there to participate in the Scout outings, and nobody messed with them. We didn't make a big deal about it. We didn't celebrate it, but we didn't denigrate it. Now, why that can't be the mantra, I don't know. Why do we have to celebrate? That I think is the issue at hand.
Well, I always enjoy listening to Amon Dean's presentations here at United We Strike, and I noticed that there's quite a bit of discussion these days per consciousness. And if you recall from last month, I brought up this connections program based upon the book called The Axe Maker's Gift. technology's capture and control of our minds and culture, which was put out in 1995. One of its authors, we had the historian James Burke, familiar to people that have watched PBS over the years, and then also the psychologist Robert Ornstein. And he wrote something which was his bestseller called The Psychology of Consciousness. But I'm anxious to address this word consciousness, which is a different word, although not too far apart from that word consciousness sometime. And so I'm anxious to explore that because I think this is very much part and parcel of the changes that we're seeing in our culture as we marry these different worlds globally into a one-world structure. Of course, you and I, we're witnessing this today as our listeners. We're seeing this, at times painful, reordering of the world. And it's occurring not only culturally, but in every way socially. It's occurring within our education system, within our legal system. It affects the scientific community. Really, every single aspect of our lives is this reordering of our world, driven largely by technology, I might add, is painful for many people today.
Well, when you think about it, though, I know there are technophobes out there, people who would just as soon, go back to, wood-burning stoves and horse and buggy. And, being something of a libertarian mindset, I would say, gee, there ought to be some place where people who really want to have a wood stove and a horse and buggy can live a comfortable life in the lifestyle that they choose without any interference from anybody else. I mean, I would be all in favor of that. Personally, I have embraced technology to a large degree. I even use it as my means of supporting myself. I think technology itself is fairly benign. It's often how it's used. Like we've got this marvelous new technology that everybody in the computer industry, the industry where I make my living, is calling the cloud. And all small businesses want to migrate all their stuff to the cloud. And I'm sitting there scratching my head saying, why do you want to make it so easy for everybody in the universe to know your business? So, I remember when small business jealously guarded their accounting data and their customer lists and things like that. They didn't want to take any chance that stuff might get out of their control. And now everybody's rushing to put this. Well, and then, of course, we find out all this stuff about the NSA spying on everything. And boy, when you put your stuff out in the cloud, it just makes it so much easier. Now, is that the fault of the technology? Because the technology in and of itself is totally benign. It doesn't care. Or is it the fault of nosy people who just want to stick their nose into stuff that's not their business? We have lost the ability to say, hey, you know what? That's none of my business. I don't want to know.
Well, unfortunately, with this modern technology connected to the personal computer and all the devices and applications that we see in the marketplace available to us today, we see a rapid consolidation of power centers, just like we witnessed with big media over the years. And unfortunately, I have never met a strong technologically oriented person, a person who's been educated in many more ways than I will ever want to be. None of these people have ever told me that any of my data is safe online. So what does that tell us about this world of competition, which is part and parcel of our capitalist system? And as it's married to this, as it's been married to, shall we call it socialism, every single aspect of what is called pure socialism today, it's easy to see that, it's easy to sabotage a competitor if you have the means of production. And I think we're seeing this. I think our data is being sold, our data is being mined, and it's all going to marketing firms and large corporations, because, of course, they want to have an edge on their competitors in terms of what it is that the so-called consumers are wanting and what will they head for or purchase, say, in droves. And so I can see why H.G. Wells talked about world socialism in 1939. And I can see what has occurred with the creation of the Fabian Society in 1884. I understand why he wrote the book The Invisible Man in 1897, because I think this was the dream of the people he surrounded himself with. In my estimation, I believe that they had bought in to this poem called The Fable of the Bees, which was written by a guy named Bernard de Mandeville. And he described a perfectly ordered society and likened it to a bee colony, where you have droves or drones and workers, and then of course you have the queen bee and the royal court, shall we say. And his poem, The Fable of the Bees, was a major inspiration for Adam Weishaupt when he announced the Bavarian Order of the Illuminati on May 1st, 1776. He wanted to call it the Order of the Bees, or even the Perfectibilists. But I think it's very true that people like not only Karl Marx, but Adam Smith both derived their theory regarding the division of labor from this gentleman named Bernard de Mandeville. So you know me, I'm always one that has lots of time to research. I have for several years now. And I like to provide these kind of perspectives to people who are curious as to how this world has come into be as it has. And that's why I brought up this thing called a report on the axe maker's gift last month, because I think it provides critical perspective of the so-called justification based upon history, a certain version of history perhaps, and a certain worldview that has come to be made popular today. And it is socialism. It combines corporatism or fascism along with capitalism, along with communism, and many other types of isms associated with this kind of societal organization that we can name euphemistically as simply socialism. And then I constantly say, with socialism comes gangsterism, and with it comes slavery. And this, unfortunately, is the world in which we inhabit. Simply by understanding how it was justified that the laws had to be changed, how this one world system had to come into existence, I think makes us better prepared for how best to navigate the landscape, especially the cultural milieu, the economic milieu in which we live today. Any thoughts?
I don't think I would limit it just to socialism. I think I would say whether you call it socialism or capitalism or communism, it doesn't really matter, because they're all basically the same. You have a small group of control freaks at the top of the pyramid and a whole bunch of monkey people down on the bottom holding the top up. I would much prefer to involve myself in a traditional free market economy that isn't dependent on capital nor on central planning, but It seems I'm going to have to deal with one of them. I'm going to have to deal with a capitalism or a socialism or some kind of an ism, because it's very convenient for those who are at the top of the pyramid to have such a program in play. So when people start talking about socialism and capitalism and how this one's better than that one, I to be honest with you, Lark, I kind of yawn, because, for the guy down at the bottom of the pyramid holding the top of it up, it don't make any difference to me.
Well, I can understand. That take on the situation. The average person is, as you say, is really only interested in how he or she is going to get by and get through, to live their life and make it as fulfilling and as beautiful as they can make it. And that's totally understandable. But I see that there are people at the top, as you describe them, as control freaks, shall we say, who've enlisted a whole lot of folks to their cause. Whole lot of folks. For instance, since the days of Thomas Malthus, it has been supposed that we've just got too many folks on this planet, and we have to depopulate. And that's, of course, been the subject of much controversy over the years. But see, I see it manifest in our so-called healthcare system today, especially the establishment healthcare system, of which this so-called Affordable Care Act is directed, makes that kind of Malthusian doctrine manifest, as many of our hosts here and as a larger number of us have come to realize. We have to be more responsible and proactive with our own health nowadays, and we have to simply avoid these people, at least in my worldview. I just as soon, I don't know if you've ever been involved in a court case in your lifetime, Gary, but I'm telling you, it takes a lot out of you. I mean, if you've been in business as I have, just suing somebody to collect your money sometimes is a nightmare. It's just a nightmare. So, I mean, what I'm saying is that we want to avoid the courthouse and attorneys and the high costs associated with that, both economically or financially and emotionally, in the same way that we want to avoid hospitals and allopathic physicians, etc. I think more and more people, too, who are actually involved in these professions are understanding how they have actually been duped into living lives of organized crime. And I think that's going to be made even more apparent as time goes on. I think we're going to see our family doctors and even specialists in that industry are going to leave the profession in droves, and hopefully they will, and do something like become a healer.
Gee, here I'm waiting for you to wrap it up, and you're looking to me, huh?
Well, not really.
But believe it or not, my daughter is a doctor. She got out of medical school, I guess, about 1.5 years ago, and when she was choosing a specialty, if you will, she went kind of, instead of the specialty, she went to a more generic. She is a doctor of osteopathic medicine. So she not only has the license to be a drug dealer, she also actually understands a little bit about chiropractic and nutrition. And I mean, she's actually been trained in traditional healing arts.
I think that's wonderful. Ron Paul has a young son named Robert who lives near me. He is an osteopath.
Yeah, I was very pleased that she went in that direction. Needless to say, Lark, we're coming up on about about 1.5 minutes here before I have to cut you loose and bring on our next presenter. And, I certainly want you to have an opportunity to do a little bit of that blatant self-promotion. People get a little taste of what your message is all about. They might be looking to find out a little bit more. So take a moment or two here to let people know where they can find out more about what you're into.
Well, very good. I'm happy to do that. First of all, you've been listening to Lark in Texas. This is me. You can find me at larkintexas.blogspot.com, and also to Gary Hendershot. And Gary's one of our producers here at smartscarecrow.com. Look up something on the internet, folks, called What is Communitarian Law? And do a search for the Axe Maker's Gift, also on YouTube. And if that's beneficial for you folks today, then I'm very pleased for the time we spent together.
Well, Lark, it's always a pleasure having you on the United We Strike Marathon. We do appreciate your participation, and I think I'm going to take us out with a this week I decided I was going to do really, really old, obscure music. I played Do You Want to Know a Secret by the Beatles as my last lead out. This time I'm going to do a little bit of antique Frank Zappa. Hope you all get a kick out of this.
I love it. Thanks for joining me, Gary.
Take care, Lark. Good night.